Prime Minister Rama, you have an interesting position because you are a member of NATO, you're not a member of the EU, yet wanted to discuss the EU's reaction to this crisis in particular, and if there has been this awakening that everyone is speaking of. How do you perceive the EU's actions over the past half year in this crisis?
First of all, it's not an interesting position, frankly. We would like to be also in the EU.
Working on this, working on this.
But for sure, it's a way to see it as interesting. Now, my understanding of things is that this war is challenging the very fundamentals of our societies in the Western part. And at the end, I think the real question is not about how much the war wake you up, because bombs wake you up, usually, you can't sleep. But how resilient the West can be, knowing that the threshold of pain of Russians is much higher, and knowing that taking from the table the champagne of someone that is used to drink champagne seems more painful than taking from the table some breads from someone that is used to eat not a lot of bread. So the real question here is the resilience. And you were touching a bit in your introduction how some things start to change and how the emotions and the strong solidarity of the first months starts to look less enthusiastic because the everyday life is not easy and so on. And this will challenge not simply European Union or Europe, but will challenge the fundamentals. And if I would add one point here is that I don't see Europe changing in any way. So, okay, you know, more solidarity, more sense of being together, more meetings, but in making more meetings, Europe is good. There's no problem. The thing is how Europe itself is changing, and it doesn't look like changing in any way. So it's more a kind of inertia between the war that on one hand are the Russians, on the other hand is Ukraine and the Americans pulling a lot of heavy support, Europe joining in supporting as much as every country can, but there is not something like Europe in this. There are different countries and with a common position, which is, okay, it's a position of principle, but at the end, it doesn't look like everything is in place to be extremely optimistic.
As Prime Minister Rama just pointed to, there is a lot of rhetoric, there are a lot of meetings, individual countries, some are doing more than others. Do you see really a long-term common approach by the EU to this crisis, or is it going to remain this patchwork where you have Poland, the Czech Republic, some countries in the Baltics and so forth, really doing more than some countries in Western Europe that shall remain anonymous?
If you look to other closest neighborhood, Western Balkans, was our approach to the Western Balkan strategic one? Did we take into account geopolitical context when we put on hold for so long Albania and North Macedonia? They should have started negotiations had we been geopolitical and strategic many, many years ago. Many, many years ago. that this approach to Western Balkans contradicts to what it should be if we want to talk about geopolitical nature of that.
Edi Rama, your country has been made a lot of promises about accession, as have all of the Western Balkan nations, going back before the war. Do you feel that there's now new impetus here to move accession forward, or are you hearing more of the same? Ivan Korchok raises an interesting point of how can Europe claim to be a geopolitical actor if it can't even fix its backyard, get its backyard in order. What is your view on where?
I have to thank Ivan because he perfectly elaborated as a skillful diplomat what I was trying to hint as an artist. The thing is the following. If we see it based on the generic view, we feel good. But if you go a bit more in some details, then we realize that what we see in the generic picture, like, for example, the will to put the sanctions and to first package and second package and third package, is reacting, which is a pretty good way to react, but it's not, in the meantime, acting proactively to change some things that are there and that cry for justice. Let me give you one example. Kosovo. Kosovo was liberated by the big powers, democratic powers, from a barbaric regime. But guess what? Under the barbaric regime, they could move freely in Europe. With the liberators, they are hostage. They cannot move freely. So the grandfathers of the kids that have been born in the free Kosovo, and now they are adults, could go to Germany, could come to Austria, could go to even work. The kids cannot move because there is no visa liberalization for Kosovo. So what is this geopolitical awakening? When you have the Western Balkans there in the middle of Europe, and you have European Union as the only, in my knowledge, geographical reality in the history of the maps, with one outside border and one inside border, because to enter in the Western Balkans, you need to enter in the European Union first. You cannot come in any country of the Balkans without entering the European Union. And so this geographical reality is not dealt politically in the right way, I guess. And while there has been visa liberalization for dozens of millions of people, namely Ukraine or Georgia, less than 2 million people are kept hostage in the middle of Europe there because of what? And then, on the other hand, there are the tensions, Mitrovica, non-Mitrovica, and when it comes to support the breakthrough of the dialogue, nobody thinks, okay, give these people the freedom to move and tell them, okay, you are free to move now, but at the same time, let's be more constructive in dialogue. Secondly, look what happened with North Macedonia and Albania. I didn't want to go back to that because I thought it was over. But let's go back to that for the sake of debate. One NATO country, Bulgaria, in the middle of a war, kidnapping 2 other NATO countries. For what? For some history issues. And the European Union becoming a powerless cathedral of states and in front of one state claiming some historical things. I have nothing against claiming historical things, but first of all, when historical things have to be claimed through politicians, then there is no chance to solve the old, but there is a lot of chance to create new historical problems. Secondly, how European Union can be a place where you bring historical issues with each other. Imagine if Slovakia and Czech Republic or Austria and Germany or whomever here will start thinking in these terms. Thirdly, I think that if before the war, this French idea of a new European political community was more like a skip from the real issue, the accession. Today, this has a great potential to be dealt with, elaborated, and to be used as a breakthrough to create something new. And to bring everyone in a table. Because we are not EU, but we are Europe. So the U we don't have, and I don't know when we'll have. But we have. So, and this EU missing is like you are second category Europeans.
But do you feel that there's new impetus?
Don't ask me about what I feel because you'll be disappointed. I'm just trying to tell you what I think. What I feel is feelings are not. It's not a good time for feelings. So what I was trying to say is there is a pandemic. Okay, there is a pandemic, and everyone is looking for vaccines, and we are in the middle of Europe, with a lot of connections, with all the TVs all over the place, and in every family having people in Italy, Greece, Germany. And these guys gather in Brussels, and they distribute vaccines, and they don't give a damn, to say it nicely, about these 6 countries in the middle of Europe, needing at least a sign of solidarity by saying, okay, we have some vaccines for your nurses or for your doctors. No. And guess what? We have to run to China, to Russia, to Turkey. While when we discuss geostrategy, is about the third actors that should not be allowed to come to the Western Balkans. And when it comes to a question of life and death, it's China that saves a lot of lives in the Western Balkans. It's Russia and it's Turkey. Without president of Turkey, we would not have had the vaccines. Point. Full stop. And when now, I think it's time to create this community where, independently from having EU or not having the EU in your plate, you can sit down and be together in the big issues like climate change, like war, like sanctions, like this and like that. Because otherwise, how you can keep the unity? How you can keep the unity of purposes? And I was listening very, very carefully. The point is, think about the people in Germany that had this €9 free ride, okay, for 3 months in the public transport. They don't have it anymore. Now, they are angry because they want to have the €9 again.
I think they'll.
And when we talk about Germany, imagine now Western Balkans, and imagine then Latino countries that need to be supported. So and the last point I have, in the meantime, this war has come also with an incredibly interesting, if we can use the word, chance to make a faster green transition. Because not anymore by the goodwill, but by the necessity, we can move much faster towards changing the whole nature of our energy production. But for this, we need Saudi Arabia, for example. We need to see the Middle East, and I'm mentioning Saudi Arabia because there is a huge potential to create a cooperation based on the Vision 2030 that is about also exporting, making Saudi Arabia, imagine, they are sitting on oil and they want to become self-sufficient in green energy and also net export of green energy. So there are many issues that come together, and I think this war comes with a lot of risks, but also with a big potential. At the end, the question remains, will the public opinions in the West and richer the country, bigger the problem of having resilience.
Yeah.
This is the point. They have the money, but the capacity to sacrifice is much lower. So, and the problem is that what Ivan mentioned is absolutely revealing in terms of why certain things were not thought before. Not because people didn't know, but because the memory is fading away. So it's a generation that has never seen a war, that has never thought about why European Union exists, first and foremost, as the right place to prevent wars and to strengthen security. And now this is the challenge. And I have a very last point. There is one thing that I wonder a lot. We have, because of the democratic nature of the societies, but not only because of that, but because of the free ride of fake news in all our environments, we have a big disadvantage. Because while we cannot breach Putin's wall of propaganda, Putin can breach every day, the curtain of information in our countries. So it's also a big opportunity to really think seriously about how to fight fake news. Freedom of reach is not freedom of speech. And while freedom of reach has become totally, untouchable, freedom of speech is being less and less and less and less powerful.